Oh, man, it's a little late, but don't worry. The United Happy Hour's here. United keep on winning. Of course they do. They've only lost once since we went on the air. Let's do it.
Yeah, hello and welcome back to United Happy Hour. Pauly, you introduced the show so beautifully like you always do. But just as sure as there's another United Happy Hour, is it just as sure that there was another United win? Well, 2 wins actually since the last United Happy Hour, Pauly. One in Europe last Thursday, which seems quite a long way away now, considering that the second leg is only a couple of days away. And obviously a fantastic win over Tottenham at the weekend. And look, let's talk about we'll talk about both. Let's talk about the win on Sunday, obviously, and let's look at this run that United have been on. But first of all, Paulie, the game on Sunday, I thought second half, that is as good as I've seen Manchester United play for quite a while, to be honest. Probably as good from the City first half, probably, the derby about a month or so ago. I think that second half against Tottenham was right up there with that performance. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. It was one of those where, as we sat there watching it, you felt comfortable talking about going and getting a winner, which normally you don't feel that way. You feel like, hey, don't tempt fate, and you're pleading. You're at the bargaining stage of grief with the please, I'll just get me a winner. This one felt like it was. Once we got that winner, United did do that thing that they always do whenever they go up and there's 15 minutes or less on the clock, and that they forgot how to play football for a while, but then they did figure it out again, which was nice. But even while they were forgetting how to play football, it still felt like they're going to see this one out. This was just a game where United just slowly ramped up the pressure, and then they slowly ramped it up more, and then they slowly ramped it up more, and then they slowly ramped it up more, and you could feel it happening. And when we always talk about the slow starts and can this team get going, we talked about it on the last show of we worry about when they have to bring their own tempo. They did, and they were very good with it. And I think it goes back to the first half of the season when we were only playing well for one half or not. And I was saying, work harder, work smarter, not harder. If you can play for 45 minutes with Cavani and Rashford against Southampton and come away with 3 points, then do that rather than playing for 90. And they kept it in check, because you even read the Spurs reports on this, and even the Spurs writers will say United were the better team in the first half. I don't know if I agree with that, but that's the Spurs perspective of it.
Yeah, and it's a tough one, that, isn't it? Because I didn't think a lot happened in that first half.
Exactly.
To be honest. Certainly not the first half an hour, so it's very hard to judge who was really on top, to be honest.
I've watched that first half hour twice already, or 3 times now. So I watched it live, and something happened that I forgot to write down what time it was, and I wanted to make note of it. And then I went back to watch it, and I couldn't find it. And then I went back again, and I couldn't find it. I was like, I swear this happened, but whatever, not the biggest deal. But yeah, nothing did happen. But that's it. Essentially, if United were going out there, work smarter, not harder, let's just turn this into a 45-minute game in the second half, because we know we're fitter than you. Solskjaer knows how fit his team is. He knows how fit a Mourinho team is. Then just go out there and kill 45 minutes of the game. And essentially they did that.
And I think that this is a game, Paulie, where what you're saying there is absolutely bang on. I think Sky Sports brought some stats up about Tottenham when they go in front this season. I think they've blown more leads than any other team in the league. Their sort of possession drops more than anybody when they take the lead. The amount of shots that they have drops when they take the lead. All these different stats that Sky Sports were showing, they were like ranked 19th and 20th in the Premier League, which is obviously worst or next to worst. And I suppose if there is one team that you can sort of grow in confidence against when you go behind, I suppose it is Tottenham. And if you look at the way our season's gone, Paulie, and the amount of points that we've won from losing positions, Tottenham are almost like the perfect opposition for United this season, because it's almost as if that's what United need. They need a team to go in front, especially the way I think Tottenham went in front in this game on Sunday. That United will have felt aggrieved because obviously they had a goal, rightly or wrongly chalked off, however you want to look at it. For me, it was wrongly. But then to add insult to injury, the guy who is the instigator in that goal being disallowed goes and scores Tottenham's first. And that, as an opposition team, is really going to get you back up. So I really think when you look at those stats, I didn't see them before the game, but Tottenham were an ideal opposition for United on Sunday.
Yeah, only Brighton have dropped more points from winning positions this season than Tottenham. Yeah. And we all know about United and their tendency to come from behind. They have 12 more points than the second best team in that regard, points won from losing positions. United have 28 now, Leicester have 16.
Yeah.
8 times Tottenham have had the lead at or near halftime. They had the lead in the North London derby, and Arsenal scored in injury time of the first half to tie it. So 8 times they have had a lead at or near halftime and didn't win the game. So this was we were gonna talk about it and you'd bring it up, but this is that VAR situation, how it went down.
Yeah.
We'll get to that, but
it's funny because I messaged you, didn't I, Pauly, saying about, not moaning about it, but I made sort of a joke about it, and you said, well, don't worry about it too much because it actually benefited us, didn't it? But like you say, we'll talk about that just a little bit later on in the show. I just want to bring this comment up, Pauly, because I think this is a great comment here. Thought MU edged the first half, but barely so. They dominated the second half, which was hugely impressive, given that they played in Spain Thursday night while Spurs had no midweek game. And I've got to say, Pauly, that would be the most striking thing for me if I was a Tottenham fan. Now, it's far for me to comment as a Tottenham fan, but the fact that they had all week to plan for this game, and I actually did a show in midweek with Hayder and a few other guys on a show last Thursday, and I was saying if there was one manager for all the negativity Jose gets that I wouldn't want to come up against when he's got a week to plan for a team, would probably still be Jose Mourinho, regardless of what people say about him. But if I was a Tottenham fan, I'd be really alarmed at how weak and sort of tired that Tottenham looked in that last 20 minutes. And even in that last 10 minutes after the goal, Pauly, the second goal, you didn't see any fight for them to try and get the ball back off. There was no intensity. United could waste time, I felt, at every opportunity. And Tottenham weren't trying to hurry them up in any way, really.
That's sort of been the theme of United's season, though, was at the first half of the season, you go back to the games against West Ham and against Southampton, when United were playing in the Champions League midweek and they weren't playing anything yet, and United were running them off the pitch in the end of the second half. Yeah. And when did United run into trouble this season has been in January, when everybody was playing midweek games. And somehow that's when United got bogged. That's when Everton came back on them. That's when Sheffield United scored that late goal. That's when, they couldn't come up with that goal against Liverpool. Then you come back to now where, again, United are in the Europa League, and they have these Thursday night games, and they're coming back against Brighton. How many Brighton players played in the international break? How many United players played in the international break? And United are running them off the pitch at the end of the game. And then they take a trip to Granada and played in what was not an easy game in any way, shape, or form. Maybe technically it should have been easier, but physically it was not an easy game.
Yeah, I was going to say that. It looked like everything looked very slow, Pauly. I mean, the pitch looked good against Granada, but I'm no expert on cutting pitches and things like that. I'm no groundsman, but it did look quite thick and heavy, and even passes looked like they weren't sort of moving across the ground smoothly.
And Granada were just playing very physical. They were hacking us. So even though Granada never really came close to scoring, and the game was basically in the balance, it wasn't a situation like Real Sociedad where you could just go and see it out for the final 20 minutes. This was a grueling 90 minutes, and they come home and they run Spurs off the pitch. And I wrote about this. It was published just a few hours ago. You can go to thebuzzardbeaver.com to check it out. it was sort of tongue in cheek at first. I was celebrating the win, and I'm watching the goal celebrations, and I was like, I'm just going to write about goal celebrations for this match. And it was sort of tongue in cheek. And then I watched it back and I'm like, no, this actually works. You could look at the goal celebrations that we had in every situation and compare them with Tottenham. And you just see it. When Cavani scores that first goal, who's the first man over there? Who Cavani runs over to the corner, jumps up. Who's right behind him giving his own jump? Paul Pogba. And those are two players that there's been a lot been written about them, that they might not be happy, that they want to leave. And you could tell right then and there, these are not two players who are just being professional and seeing it out. And they very much want to win. This was huge for them. This was an important game. And the Fred goal, obviously, you know how much the team loves Fred and how much they were celebrating.
Bruno Fernandes first over there to shove him over, which was probably not helpful, to be fair. I didn't like that. He's on his knees, and I'm thinking, he's pushed him over. You don't want to get his knees stuck in the turf. But look, Bruno and Fred are very, very... I think, a lot of people criticise Fred, but I think if you speak to Bruno, I think you get a very different opinion on Fred. And I think a lot of it is Pauly. I just get the feeling that Fred is one of those players, Monday to Friday, I always say this, probably looks fantastic in training, to be fair. Knits everything together. Probably scores a lot of goals in training.
He's finishing them in training.
But, but it's just that sometimes at a weekend, look, we can't get away from it. He hasn't always been brilliant.
But think about this. Yeah. This is not – we've done this plenty of times this year. How many times have we gone 1-0 down or more? This is not a team that celebrates equalizers. And I went back and I watched the equalizer that Rashford scored against Brighton at 61st minute. So this was about 3 minutes later than the Fred goal. Rashford runs off into the corner, does a little jump, and immediately, without breaking stride, turns and just starts running back to line up. No one even came over to celebrate with Rashford because, hey, get the ball, let's go. We'll celebrate the winner. And they did celebrate the winner when Mason Greenwood scored. Everyone, the entire team ran over to Fred. That's how much that goal meant to them. That's how they were just so happy to see Fred get that goal. They all feel that Fred deserves it. That is telling about Fred's standing in the team. And if you watch closely, you could see Cavani was on his knees when Fred put that in. You could see how he reacted to the goal and how they reacted when Cavani scored. Look, everybody on this team has some sort of, whether it's a vendetta against Mourinho or just a vendetta against, we want revenge for 6-1. And Edinson Cavani was not a member of Manchester United when that 6-1 game happened. And you see him at the full-time whistle jump for joy with such... This game was so... This is a team that wants to win. This is a team that is together. This is a team that is tired of the criticism whenever they do, it wasn't good enough. This is the team that has said, hey, we've won 4 in a row. What do we always... Joe, you and I always talk, win 4 out of the next 5. Just win 4 out of the next 5.
3 out of 5.
That is what they've done. They've won 4 in a row. They've won 5 of their last 7 in the league. They have the most points in the league in the last 7 matches. That includes Manchester City. When everybody talks about, the performances aren't good enough and we're inconsistent, we are the most consistent team in the league. You want to talk about bad inconsistency? Look at every other team. They're all dropping points too. So this is the team. This meant so much to them. But then you juxtapose that. You look at the Spurs goal. When Son scored that goal, he runs over. He's happy. Sergio Reguilon comes over and gives him a little celebration. And then everybody, 5 or 6 players kind of jog over to them. And Harry Kane gives like the most half-ass little tiny tap hug. The celebration was the perfect microcosm for Harry Kane's personality. Boring. And it just seemed like this team wasn't that happy. Not that they're not enjoying their football at the moment, but like that they knew what was going to come from this. That, we went 1-0 up. That's not good.
It's not even that, Pauly. It's almost like sometimes I feel with Tottenham, there's a surprise when they score a goal. It's almost a bit like, whoa, we've just we've cut through a team, or we've scored a goal trying to play. They're almost surprised that they score. But look, again, I don't want to dwell too much on Mourinho, Pauly, because we will talk a bit more. But incidentally, because of what happened after the game, we will be talking more about Mourinho later on in the show. But some people have been asking us here about Jose and obviously things like that, and why he isn't really the old Jose. It's difficult to answer, Paulie, but what I will say is when I look at the last two clubs he's been at, and I include United in that, obviously, I don't think he's got what he has had at other clubs that's made him so successful in the past. So if you think of Jose, he always relied on a really strong spine, Paulie. So two very, very good centre-backs. You think of his Chelsea days with Terry and Carvalho, you think back to, his Inter Milan days where he had the big guy who got headbutted by Zidane.
Size and strength up the middle. I mean, look at when he came to United. Paul Pogba was a huge guy. He made Marouane Fellaini an important part. Scott McTominay got promoted simply because of his size. McTominay had a growth spurt and got promoted. And even the coaches at the academy were like, why is this guy getting size? He goes and he gets Nemanja Matic. Size. He loves that size in the middle of the park. Why didn't he look under Herrera?
For Jose to be successful, he needs two world-class centre-backs playing together in a partnership, and he needs a world-class holding midfielder. That's what he's always had at every team where he's been successful. And until he gets to another club where he gets that, he probably won't be successful again. And the more and more that he keeps messing up at clubs like United and Tottenham, the less chance he'll get to manage clubs that have got world-class centre-backs playing as a partnership, Paulie. So maybe we are.
I just think right now with him, he's not embracing what he's got. He's not playing to his strengths. That goal that Spurs scored was beautiful. They created a mismatch and then they carved through United with one touch. One touch from Dyer to Lo Celso, who one touch got it to Ndombele, which bypassed the entire midfield. And Ndombele looks up, puts it in for Kane, who flicks it on to Mora, who gives it over to Son. Beautiful. And this is not even the first time that Spurs have scored a goal like that. They've done this plenty of times this season. And then instead of doing that again, Jose goes, right, that's it, close up shop, even though their center backs are weak, their midfield is a little weak, and they're just inviting pressure onto them. And this is why it felt inevitable on Sundays, because you look at that celebration from Spurs, it's like they knew what was going to happen, and then they just retreat into their box and they lose their confidence. Their confidence goes while United's confidence is gaining, because Spurs know we're going to blow this and United know we're going to come back.
Yeah, no, exactly. Paulie, one more point I just want to make on this, obviously the Tottenham game, before we move on to have a look at what's on social media. And it was surrounding a tweet that I saw. I haven't managed to get it for you to bring it up, but I think it was from Adam Crafton. It was shared to me, and it was this idea that it's quite strange that how often United tend to mirror their opponents in the first initial stages of the game. So I think you could argue for that first half an hour against Tottenham, we knew what we were going to get from Tottenham. They were always going to be methodical, quite slow, and United do have a habit, I think, of sort of getting dragged into playing the game that other teams want them to play, or like I say, mirroring them and sort of taking a while to sort of feel them out. But when they do work it out, they can be devastating, and they obviously worked it out against Tottenham. But is it a bit of a concern that if other teams start slowly against us, we tend to mirror that rather than trying to do the opposite?
Yeah, that's fair. That is fair, because it is a concern. Now, sometimes that's worked in our favor. Burnley, we got that late winner. Wolves, we got that late winner. Other times it hasn't. Liverpool, we turned it on late, but not early enough. Chelsea at home, we turned it on late, but not early enough. So that's fair.
I just think if you look at that game in hindsight, Paulie, and it's a wonderful thing, isn't it? But if United had played the second half, they'd have started the game in that way, which I know is a lot to ask, because they very rarely do start games like that. It's one of the biggest mysteries in football, the way United start sometimes. But if you look at that game, Paulie, they could have been comfortable at half-time if they'd have played the same way in the first half as they did the second. They would have been, for me, 3-1 up probably at half-time.
Yeah, but it goes back to exactly what you just said and how they mirror the team. There was a lot of Mourinho in this team. Look, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is a very pragmatic manager. He is. Yeah. And one of the things that I noticed right away when he first took over, when we went to Wembley to face Tottenham, that 1-0 game, that whole second half was Mourinho ball. And I was talking about it with my friends, and I was like, what Solskjaer's doing is proving that it's not Mourinho ball that doesn't work. You can win doing this. It's the fact that the players hated him and didn't want to play for him. And now the players like the manager and they buy in. They are willing to do the work in that game, because the difference was when Watford came to Old Trafford, Mourinho would have them play the same bloody way. When Watford come to Old Trafford, Ollie goes, go out there and beat them, because whenever Ollie's asked about tactics, which he's asked about it far more than any other manager, he always shifts that question and talks about, I want my team to be bold, I want my team to take risks, and I want them to express themselves on the pitch. And that's the fundamental difference, is Mourinho is afraid of risk. He is afraid of – Mourinho's whole thing is, when I have the ball, we're at our most vulnerable, and you can't leave your position. And that's why – it was always hard for him to break down teams, because you need movement, and he won't let you move, because if you're Marcus Rashford running in off the left wing and we turn the ball over, now we don't have a left winger.
Yeah.
And the first half was and Solskjaer's like that. He is very
United were worried about being transitioned on in that first half, but I think that is fair enough.
But he's always been like that in that he's always organized defensively and very organized. But then there's that element of, when the chance presents itself, go. You have that freedom. The game that really, the moment that really personified that was when we went to Arsenal in the FA Cup about a month after Solskjaer took over, and did the same thing. We played a diamond. We sat back the entire time and just absorbed pressure. But how did we score that second goal? Luke Shaw went on a run all the way down the pitch where he ended up on the right side of the field. Under Mourinho, you're not allowed to do that. Under Solskjaer, it was, the opportunity is there, so go. So in the first half, Pogba and Rashford switched sides a bit, but everything was there wasn't a lot of, you are exactly right. We are worried about being transitioned on. And in the second half, he turned Pogba into the Paul Pogba we saw against Aston Villa. Yeah, you're playing on the left wing, but go play like Juan Mata does. Find a place. You don't have to stay on the wing. You can find a place to receive a pass. You could come deep to get the ball. And suddenly, Pogba took over the game and was everywhere. And that was the difference, is now United's players are allowed to express themselves versus Spurs, who go out there and show you, this is what we are capable of doing. And we do this every single goddamn game. Yeah. We could do this so many times if we want. And as soon as we do it once, you go, that's enough.
Yeah, no, exactly, Pauly. And look, for me, the biggest difference between Mourinho ball and Ollie's version of Mourinho ball in a nutshell is that with Ollie, you get it for 45 minutes, Pauly. With Mourinho, you get that for 90 minutes. There's three certainties in life, and that is death, taxes, and that United will pick up in the second half of the game. It happens every time, Pauly. They are such a second half team. It's unbelievable. I'm sure you've got stats on it somewhere, but I would love to see the difference in United's output in the second half of games. Did
you not see that tweet by like the Sun or like the Star or something that was basically?
No, I didn't see that.
If games ended at halftime, United would be in the bottom half of the table, and it's like, well, if they didn't score any goals this season, they'd be getting relegated.
Well, exactly. There's a lot to be said about teams who can come stronger on in the second half, anyway. But Pauly, without further ado, mate, let's have a look at what's on social media. I mean, we talk about United's form. My form has really picked up with playing that. I'm getting it spot on, mate. I tell you, I'm on a great
returns from injury, and suddenly you're hitting that button.
Exactly. Yeah, my index finger has had 6 weeks out, but it's back up to match fitness now. So there we go. Pauly, look, there's nowhere else to start with what's on social media. You won't spend too long because I think everything that's been said on it that needs to be said. But we have to start with the VAR, because for me, it changes the game completely. It doesn't only change the game, it changed definitely the attitude of, well, certainly United players. And after Tottenham scored, it changes their attitude, which a goal always does anyway. So that's probably not too much to read into. But I mean, what was your thoughts on that, boy? I mean, first of all, the decision, and then obviously the effect that it had on United.
Yeah, I'm very happy with it. Yeah. I keep seeing United fans are not, which I don't get. Like we've spent 25 minutes discussing this already. United good when 1-0 down, Spurs bad when 1-0 up. If you had to script the game, you would say, let's put Spurs up 1-0. So when United go up 1-0, now we're on different territory. Who knows how Jose is going to come out and combat this in the second half if they're chasing a goal. That could be bad. United went 1-0 up on Spurs. They lost 6-1.
Yeah.
So, that's bad. So Varchester United comes in and steps in to fix this situation. I didn't know what they were looking for. Look, Giovanni Lo Celso went from behind very hard into Marcus Rashford's ankle about 5 minutes earlier. Not a foul. Victor
Everyone
Lindelof
seemed to focus on the contact on the facial area, whereas I think for me, you needed to look at the wrap on the ankle, like you say, Paul.
Look at West Brom, though. Look at West Brom, where the guy pulls Victor Lindelof's face to win the header. And, of course, United fans react, oh, Lindelof has to be stronger. All right, well, okay, if United fans are right and Lindelof has to be strong, we know that that's not a foul. So when Scott McTominay's finger grazes Son in the face, we know that's not a foul. So I didn't know how VAR was going to be able to step in and help us here, but they managed to deem that a foul to wipe that goal off the board. United go down 1-0, and therefore we get put into the best situation for ourselves. I'd be livid if I were a Spurs fan. I don't know why United fans are so upset. But in all seriousness, this has become the freaking problem with VAR is where they look like what happened here is you come back from this, Scott McTominay doesn't get booked. So it's not dangerous. You're not looking at a dangerous play. You're not looking at obvious foul conduct or something.
The referee was told in his ear, and he relayed it back, that it was accidental as well, Paulie, which again tells you, I know if it's accidental doesn't mean say you can't give a foul, but again, that should be a mitigate. Look, the biggest thing for me, Paulie, I'll let you carry on. I just want to say the biggest thing for me in all this, and it hasn't really been mentioned a lot, which is funny enough by the media. A lot of things I notice don't get mentioned when they're looking at United VAR decisions. But not once there does Scott McTominay ever look at Son. He doesn't even.
I noticed that too.
Yeah, he's aware that there's a player there. Of course he is, because you can hear it. It's in your subconscious as a football player. You know when you're being marked. But he doesn't know where his head is, Paul. He doesn't once make eye contact with Son. So for me, there is no. It's just a handoff. He could have been putting that hand anywhere. If he hands him in the chest, he doesn't go down, does he?
Yeah. So here's my problem. We're not looking for obvious violent conduct or anything. When we come back and McTominay doesn't get booked, then what is it? When they put in VAR and they said to overturn clear, we want to overturn clear and obvious errors. We are not trying to re-referee the game. Yeah. Well, when you go and check every goal, whenever a goal happens and you go back to check it, we're going to check for offsides, check for a handball in the buildup, check for a foul in the buildup. All you're doing is looking for reasons why the goal shouldn't count. And that's the problem here is every goal they go, oh, tell me why it shouldn't count. And
that's really ironic when the original idea for VAR coming in, Paulie, was to create more goals. If anything, it seems to be taking more goals away by looking for any particular reason, like you say, to take it away, Paul. And I have an issue with how far you go back. And I know they talk about phases, but I think if VAR is going to work in football, it's got to have a clear set of things that it can only get involved in. And if that happens to be just offside lines, then I'm fine with that. Forget all this. Take all this foul in the build-up out of it and everything. I'd rather that than the way it is at the moment, because how far are you going back? And that's the other thing. Slow motion.
That's the other thing is, like you said, the referee was told in his ear it was accidental. McTominay never even looks at Son. That doesn't mean it's not a foul. He hit him in the face. So you want to give a foul for that? You can give a foul. If that happens anywhere on the pitch, and if that happens at the halfway line and he gives a foul, no one's complaining.
Yeah.
So I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem is now we're looking to re-referee the game and saying, well, the ref saw it and let it go. The referee did not deem it a foul, but then because a goal was scored, now we have to say that's a foul and it shouldn't count. That to me doesn't make any sense because, as you just said, how far back do you go? There is no guarantee that Son would have won that ball off McTominay if he doesn't hit him. There's no guarantee that McTominay doesn't play that pass. Who, by the way, it's not like McTominay knocks Son out, plays the ball to Pogba, and Pogba quickly gives it to Pogba. Stands there for an eternity at the edge of the box before he plays that ball into Cavani. So much time passed that when do you draw the line? And this was so predictable because this has happened in every single sport that they have brought replay to. It's no longer we bring in replay because there's always a mistake made in a high profile situation that everyone watching the game, they don't need to look at a replay. They look at it once and they go, the referee made a mistake there. It's clear and obvious. And then we bring in the replay and we go, well, we're only going to look at clear and obvious. But then it goes, well, let's give a close look. Let's make sure we're getting this right. And make sure we're getting this right is not the same as clear and obvious. But
no,
as you go back, like you said, how far do you go back? Because
what does VAR get involved in moving forward, Pauly? Because something like that for me, I think you've just got to leave that in the hands of the referee. I think there's something because if a referee sees it in full time, if he makes a judgment on certain things like that, it's probably the best judgment to make because that is always going to look worse when you slow it down as well, Paulie. That's the other thing. When you slow that down and you keep repeating McTominay making this action into Son's face, it's going to look.
You cut off the 5 seconds before that, like where Son's grabbing him. But remember last year, the rule was any handball, intentional or accidental, at any point in the buildup to a goal negates it. So this year they changed it to it has to directly lead to the goal. Because if you had a 27 sequence pass last year and at one point the ball hits your arm when you're still in your own half of the pitch, accidentally, that goal was being taken off. And there was a situation, I believe it might have been in the FA Cup.
Yeah,
I want to say it was the FA Cup replay against Wolves or something where the ball was bouncing around and someone tried to flick it over to Dan James and it hit his hand and drops and he kind of stops. He kind of stops and looks at the referee because it was like, well, ball hit my hand. And the referee just points at him and does one of those, I saw it. It wasn't intentional. I'm not calling it. It's fine. And I said, well, now he should kick it out of bounds because there is absolutely nothing that Dan James could gain from what if Dan James puts in a cross here and we score? Well, then it gets taken off. There is nothing. What if Dan James passes back to Brandon Williams, who passes to Maguire, and 15 passes later, Wolves haven't touched the ball and we score? It's coming off. There was even James looked at the referee and the referee pointed at him and said, play on. It was an accident. That's not a handball. It wasn't intentional. At that point, there was nothing that Dan James could gain by retaining possession of the ball. He should have just kicked it out of bounds. Because
I agree. But Paulie, one thing I do want to sort of just touch on before we move on from this as well around VAR and just the rules of the game in general. I think a commentator made a point during the game. It might have been Martin Tyler, actually, about I just think now the PGMOL or IFAB, whoever makes rules against, somebody needs to put a set of rules in place now and just leave them a little bit. I just feel like there's been too many rule changes around handball, around offside, and football fans, football pundits, football people involved in football now have almost become quite numb in terms of not really knowing what is a foul anymore. And it's a real problem. I mean, I've listened to a lot of ex-players and pundits.
There's never been really a definition of what is a foul, though.
Yeah.
There's never, and especially in the middle of the pitch, outside of the boxes, we've seen fouls for nothing. We've seen heavy tackles go unchallenged. But, if I kind of just do a half little pull on your shirt and the ref blows the whistle and points, hey, free kick, everybody goes, no big deal. Like whether that's a foul or not. There's never been a definition of it.
No, I just think, but I do think I've not heard one player, ex-player or pundit who thought that was a foul either, which I think sort of says a lot as well, Paulie, about the game and the way the rules are going. And I mean, as a football fan myself, I do find myself getting very confused about different rules. I mean, there must have been three versions of the handball rule this season.
Right. At the end of the day, here's what I think we got to do is you go back to offside should be called the way it used to be called. If the linesman sees it, flag goes up. The whistle does not need to blow. The referee can let it go. So your players, you still got to play to the whistle. The referee can let it go until the scoring chance goes away. so that if you kick it into the net, the goal can count. Then we should come up with a challenge system. So if that flag goes up and I kick the ball into the net and I say, "Whoa, no, I was onside," every manager's got their Ole Gunnar Solskjaer iPad there. You got 15 seconds to look, to be like, we want to take a look at that. You get 2 challenges a game, like in the NFL. Yeah. And they could overturn it or they don't. We don't have to check we can't be checking goal. We can't be going back in the buildup and saying maybe there was a foul somewhere in here. Let the referee do his job. If the referee says play on, you play on. And the VAR goes into the VAR. Oh, you blatantly missed that penalty. And as opposed to that might be a penalty and it might not. So whatever your judgment is, that's fine.
I think it's really interesting what you say there about the flag and everything, Pauly, because, when I think about it, VAR is obviously, everything's invented to try and make the referee's job easier and assistant jobs easier. But I think it's complicated it for linesmen in the sense that not only are they having to think, do I think that's onside or offside? But also now they're having to think, if I do think that, does that mean I put my flag up or I don't put my flag up? It's almost like they've got too much to think about. So I think it's offside, but actually, does that mean I put my flag up anymore? Where before that was a natural action.
How many of these offsides would we be sitting here being like, if they didn't call that offside, would I care?
Yeah. I know what you mean.
If they call that back, I wouldn't be upset about that. If I saw that in real time, I would be like, oh, we just conceded a goal. Not, oh, he's offside. And Alan's comment here also start by showing in real time, not just slow motion and freeze frame.
Exactly. When you see that.
Mine is a different suggestion. Every replay should be shown in standard definition, no high definition. Standard definition, and you play it back. If you could tell a mistake was made in standard definition, then it's clear and obvious, and you overturn it. If you cannot, then it's not clear and obvious. Let the referee do his job.
I think show them replays with it buffering every 2 seconds as well. That make it, then it pixelates when it comes clearer. But yeah, McTominay doing this 100 times, just playing it over and over again doesn't look good. But
yeah, but if the flag goes up because the ref thought you were offside, then that's fine. They called it that. If the ball goes in, you could challenge it and you could get the onside back. But if the flag doesn't go up and you find out that it's the player's nose was offside, no one's saying, hey, we need to fix that.
And we learned something else this weekend as well during the game yesterday with West Brom, that actually if players are in the way of where they need to draw the lines, that becomes an issue as well, which is
I didn't see that.
The technology that we haven't seen yet, but that is obviously something that they're going to have to iron out as well, because that cannot prevent them from making decisions and preventing goals. But Pauly, we've given our little fallout from this now, but I want to move on and look at the fallout from the managers after the game, because wow, I mean, it went off a little bit, to be fair, didn't it? But we saw a side of Ole that I really liked, and I think it's interesting, this thing with Ole and Jose. It's starting to bubble up a little bit. I don't know how long it'll go on for, because I'm not quite sure how long either manager will be at their respective clubs, especially Jose at Tottenham. But I think the longer it goes, it could get more and more interested, and it's not going to be dull. But I thought Ole was really bullish in his interview after the game with Sky, and I was pleased to see that. But you could see a real anger on his face after the initial decision as well, couldn't you, Pauly? And I think that his anger really reflected the way that United then performed after that, from that moment onwards, because it seemed to spark them off, didn't it? You know what I mean? And it seemed to get a reaction out of them, and he was really angry. I mean, by Solskjaer standards, if you see that his face again after that goal is overturned, by Solskjaer standards, that is very, very angry. And but I like the way in which he said what he said after the game. And I think, the only thing I will say about it is that I'm sure United players have done that in the past, and I'm sure they will if they need to in the future. So first of all, where do you stand on the whole Ole and Jose comments after the game, Pauly?
Okay, I'm reading that comment that said PSG are killing it, but
yeah, they were.
Bayern just scored.
Yeah, Bayern just scored on against the runner.
I'm playing on my phone. I'm like, well, wait a minute.
Yeah, I think PSG have hit the woodwork twice. So yeah, carry on.
Yeah, and Neuer made this incredible save.
Yeah.
Before. I said when the VAR thing happened, I said I really hope that Ole goes I hope Ollie says something that gets him fined in this post-match press conference. Yeah. I need a classic Fergie, even a Mourinho thing.
Yeah.
Like, I hope he goes off. And
can I just say, Pauly, before you carry on, it did strike me, Pauly, when he was saying what he said. It struck me at the time when Ferguson was very unhappy about a Swansea player kicking a ball at Van Persie's head. I don't know whether you remember that interview. I think it was during the 12-13 season, and Van Persie had been fouled on the floor, and the Swansea player kicked the ball against his head. And he said something very similar about, if that was one of my players, I'd be absolutely disgusted. We're really lucky, it could have killed him. I mean, it was very over the top, but it was his anger coming out in the interview afterwards. And you could tell that this was a player that he was very protective of. Obviously, he knew what a signing he got in Van Persie, and he didn't like the thought that Van Persie could have been injured.
Yeah.
By that stupidity, you know what I mean?
I can't remember if I was saying, I feel like he's only going to do it if they win, but even if they lose, I need him to do it. Or even if they come back and win, I need him to do it. And then in hindsight, I'm not too happy with it because it gave Mourinho this out. Instead of Jose Mourinho having to answer questions as to why his team blew it or throw his players further under the bus and make it worse for him, Mourinho was now able to just spend 5 minutes talking about Solskjaer being a father. And it was...
Yeah, and in his Sky one, he ditched the our VAR and talked about the Paul Pogba elbow on Aurier, didn't he? Which again allowed him to deflect onto that as well. But
that's the same thing as what that goes back to the VAR question: is what are we looking at and what are we not? So we don't look at that. We don't look at the Pogba thing because. So all right, we checked for obvious violent conduct or whatever. Okay. Yeah. So it's a foul, but it's not. But because nobody scored, it's not a foul. What do we look at, and what do we not look at? Yeah, that's what. Remember, on the first day of the season, Paul Pogba was taken down in the box that his shoe came off, and we didn't check that. What do we look at, and what do we not? This is.
Well, I'll put it this way, Paul. If that Paul Pogba incident with Aurier would have happened in the build-up, same as McTominay's one, he could have been booked. I wouldn't have had a problem with that goal being chalked off for that, because for me, there was far more in the Pogba contact than there was in the McTominay one.
Yes, but yeah, that one boggles my mind. Going back to Solskjaer, I'm just I wish he would have spoken about it maybe this week. Yeah. I'm happy he said what he said. Don't get me wrong. And he was angry and he went after it, and it was because it was ridiculous. But in terms of the drama of the Premier League and the reason that I am happy that Jose Mourinho is back in the Premier League, just not managing my team, I wasn't happy because you gave him an out. You gave him an out so that now he didn't have to address his own shortcomings. He could just talk about you not being a good father because you apparently starve your kids, which his son has since this morning confirmed. My father never starved me, though he also said, I have never rolled around needing all 10 of my mates to come and get me up. Yeah. So there was the notion, people have forgotten that end of the quote because there was he trained me not to roll around like that, and maybe if I did do that, he wouldn't have given me.
The problem is, though, Pauly, is that you always feel like a tit for tat is exactly what Mourinho wants, don't you? So what do you want to do? Like you say, you want to do the complete opposite, Pauly, and move away from that, and don't give him the tip for him to tap back with, if you know what I mean. And you say there about it getting him out, and it really did, Pauly, because if you listen to his interview with Sky Sports after the game, he is very close, I think, to throwing some of his players under the bus. And I think a couple of more questions about his performance might have done that. I think he hinted about the idea that he can't analyse the game too much because if he does that, it won't be fair on some of his players. Well, look, read into that what you will, Pauly, but that's telling you a lot about what he thinks about.
But then he realised, I could just talk about Solskjaer starving.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just
look, the other problem with what he said was, the choice of words. Choice of words is that, Marcus Rashford's probably knocking on his door being like, excuse me, boss, this whole starving children thing.
Yeah, that's really
are you so ingrained in the football that you haven't paid attention to what any of us are doing outside off the pitch recently?
I just get this vision of Marcus going up to him in training the day after and being like, I'll give you 3 guesses what was wrong with what you said yesterday. Look at me. What was wrong with what you said yesterday? It's just, I don't thought that point, but it's a really good point, actually. It's quite the theme at the moment, obviously, with what Marcus Rashford's done. It's one of those, I think, emotions are running high. You could see what he was trying to get at. He could have probably
he chose the wrong analogy. You chose the wrong analogy, Ollie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I'm happy that he called him out, and I'm happy that he addressed the ridiculousness of that decision. But you chose the wrong analogy.
Yeah, and that's probably, look, we're talking about a manager who doesn't normally get involved in this kind of thing, does he, Paulie? You know what I mean? It's not really his style. But I do like to see it a little bit, and I think
that makes it way more.
United, they're going to have a bit more of that from him moving forward.
I think that makes it way more. People criticize him all the time because, he's smiling and he only takes the positive and something. But everybody knows that when the cameras are off, there is a fiery side of him. And when he lets it come out, he means business. Remember that the situation with Everton when he said ridiculous that we played Wednesday in Turkey and then we had to play the early match.
Look at the performance reflected his anger in that game as well, didn't it, Paulie?
Yeah, when he speaks up about something, he means business. And you're right, when he is angry, look, his team respond to him. They played very well against Everton. They played very well in the second half of this game. We saw how much this game meant to him in every one of those situations, right down to Fred scoring, which, by the way, we didn't discuss this, but I thought about tweeting it on my way into the bar on Saturday or on Sunday. I was down the block and I was going to tweet it, and I went, you know what? Just ignore it, Paul. I didn't want to take out my phone and I was focused on just walking in, but I was going to tweet. I sat down next to people and I said, we're going to win 2-0 today. Fred's going to get an early goal. Then Pogba's going to get a header on the end of a Luke Shaw cross. We're dancing on Mourinho today. And I was 1/3 right. Fred got the goal, not early, but I was the least shocked person that Fred had scored.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think if you could have picked 3 goal scorers in that game, Paulie, I mean, you'd have obviously probably picked Fred would have been one of them, to be fair. Paul Pogba to get a goal against the Mourinho side would be quite nice. And Luke Shaw, I mean, if he would have just popped it with a goal, that would have been the icing on the cake.
Yeah, like with 10 minutes to go, I was like, let's put Luke Shaw forward. Like, let's do it. Let's get the F Mourinho team out there.
But it's been
I'm looking down the bench and I'm like, do we have anybody else on the bench who has a gripe with Mourinho? Oh, get one on the bench.
Yeah, Martial wasn't fit. It's a shame when you because actually it's happened a couple of times now. You look at the awkward handshakes that they have to have after the game. I don't know if you saw the one between Mourinho and Luke Shaw.
We saw it.
Yeah, and there was a little, well, there wasn't even a handshake. It was more of a hello from a distance to Paul Pogba as well. It was very awkward.
The hello, and then Pogba like all smiles as he shakes hands with everyone else around him.
Yeah, no, it's look, sometimes football, they try and obviously disguise their feelings.
I'm waiting for Paul Pogba to, what I really wanted was for him to have that repeat performance that he had at Stamford Bridge in the FA Cup. The first time going back to Chelsea after Mourinho had gotten sacked, which when I was like, he's in Jose's backyard, and he had that header with the celebration of the Superman on the floor, and I was like, oh, that was dancing on Jose's grave, and I just wanted them to do it again.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean, mate. But on a serious note, Paulie, they do say a sort of good team does reflect their manager, and I think we're seeing that more and more with this United team. They are, you know, they can be a pleasant team to watch, and they can play some nice thing in the eye. But there is a sort of inner steel to them, a determination. And regardless of what these people say about Ollie, about him being the smiling assassin, everything like that. Look, you don't win what he won, Paulie, and you don't win things the way Ollie won things with, you know, coming off the bench and scoring goals without having something about you. I mean, he has spent a lot of his time at United very frustrated and disappointed as a player. I mean, he played with 3 other fantastic strikers, and at times he found his game time limited, Paulie, but he never once sulked him whenever he was called upon to come off the bench. I mean, he's probably the definition of a super sub, and that tells you about an inner steeliness, a good mentality, a good attitude about a man. And I think we're starting to see that about this team. You know, just because they're behind, they don't sulk, Paulie. They get on with it. You've seen players who are not playing week in, week out, but they come into the team and they do try and do a job, namely people like Dan James. You think about the first half of the season, Dan James didn't get a look in, But when he's played in the second half of the season, he's come in and done a job. He's not sulked. There's other players who are very similar to that, Pauly, and I think that's a lot of credit for that's got to be given to Ollie.
Yeah, and also just when you go back, this was a good time to take big picture look, and you go back to where we were a year and a half ago at the start of last season, and having some wins and not wins, and they could play on the counterattack, and all the criticism, and how Ollie would sit there and take it and say, well, we're building something, and it's not going to happen overnight. And first we have to do this and establish this. And what did we do last year? We counterattacked, we ran at people, we won a ton of penalties, we set a record for that. And that was how we got back. And there were some criticisms about that. And I was like, but that's what we did to get results, but we're not there yet. Now we need to add something to our game. Well, guess what? We don't get penalties anymore. We've gotten, I think, 3 in the year 2021 in all competitions.
Yeah.
We're not getting penalties, and we're not hitting teams on the counter the same way anymore. We have added an element to our game. We talked about this with the big
goals, though, Pauly. We're still one of the top goal scorers in the league.
We're scoring more. We're scoring more, but we talked about this when we looked at our games against the Big Six, back in January, how we're possessing the ball more and we're defending better, but it's coming at the behest of the attack. It's a little bit one or the other. And that Liverpool game, we talked about, this was a good opportunity. The FA Cup was, if you lose, okay, you lost in the cup, and that sucks, but you don't lose league position, and you have the opportunity to try something else. And we didn't get the job done against Arsenal in our next match. Then Pogba was hurt and everybody was tired against Chelsea, but we come back out against City. We blow the doors off it. Yes, that's more counter time, but Spurs, we have a different outlook. And suddenly we're winning these games in a different way. And we're finding we're winning other games. The Brighton match, the West Ham match, these games that we struggled in last year, we're coming around in a much different way. And it always goes back to, because every time Solskjaer would bring it up, whether it's this year in November or last season, and fans would be, it's been 4 months. What are we waiting for? Everybody wanted immediacy. It's been 4 months. What are we waiting for? And it's like, you have to be patient. It takes time. I don't know how schools work.
This season was almost a write-off anyway because of the failings in the transfer and the COVID situation.
Same team, and he has built this team up. We're 3 points off of our total from last year. And how many games do we have left? And I was going to say, I don't know how the school system works in the UK, but in the US, you go to elementary school, 4th grade and stuff, and they're gonna teach your kids. We did addition and subtract. 3rd grade, maybe we did addition and subtraction last year. Now we're gonna do multiplication, and we're gonna work on longer multiplication and long division. That's what your child is going to learn this year. Your parents go to school like the first one of the night, the first 2 weeks, and the teacher tells them, "This is what we're gonna learn this year."
Yeah.
Could you imagine going in there 3 weeks later and saying, why can't my kid do long division yet? And it's like, because we have to build the foundation. We have to make sure that he can do 9 divided by 3 first. You got
to walk before you run, Pauly, haven't you?
We're going to get to long division in February. But right now we got to make sure that he could do 9 divided by 3 and then that he could do 7 times 5. That's this United team, is everything's been little bits and pieces. Why isn't Wan-Bissaka improving? Well, if you look at Wan-Bissaka the second half of last season, night and day different player than the first half of last season. And this season, he's been even better. Is he where we want him or need him to be yet? No, but he's night and day a different player. Luke Shaw, how long did it take? And all of a sudden now, he's night and day a different player.
Yeah,
you have to be patient. And now you look at this team, you could see all the little bits that they're adding, and no one personifies that more than Mason Greenwood. Look, I wrote about this at the beginning of February. I said Mason Greenwood is having a better season this year than last year. I said, and the data is showing that he's not scoring goals, but he's doing everything else. And soon the goals will come. We talked about this in the beginning of the season, is teams are just focused on him. All 4 guys are crashing on him. And until he learns to pass the ball, that's going to keep happening. Well, guess what? He's added those elements to his game. And Solskjaer was asked about that in in the press conference against AC Milan, and he said, "Oh, but Mason's doing everything else. The goals are going to start coming." And guess what? The kid's on fire now because he's added everything else to his game. It's opened him up. And now, now he's that was last week was his first headed goal at any level for United. Yeah. He's added all these elements to this game that's making him a threat.
That cross was absolutely delicious for United's second goal. I mean, first time as well. Absolutely beautiful, Pauly. But before we end, Pauly, I just want to. For me, if you're in doubt about how United have improved over the last, wherever you want to take it from, maybe Project Restart, just have a look at how teams approach playing against us now, Pauly. It's completely different. More people are sort of sitting off us more now, I feel, and that's become a problem for United, and that's what they've got to develop next. They've got to get around that. I think the Brighton was really striking for me. Once Brighton went 1-0 up, now Brighton always just keep going.
And they didn't.
Football philosophy, but they didn't. They stopped, and I mean they are a team that just always play the same way. Tottenham, you can't really judge that because Tottenham always seem to do that when they go 1-0 up against anybody. But there are teams when they've gone in front against the Southampton, another one who sort of sat off in the second half, and they're a team that are always known for keep going. So I think just look at the way opposition sort of set up against us, and I think that told you all you need to know about how United have improved. But before we finish quickly, Pauly,
think about this. You take out those first 3 games of the season where we were unfit and no preseason, et cetera. United have lost 2 games since then. This is not an easy team to beat.
No. And that's the thing, Pauly. And look, that's why I just want to ask you quickly, people you're still getting the negativity on there saying, well, play well 45 minutes. Let's not get overhyped. It's only 1 game. But look, at this stage of season, Pauly, where do you place performance and where do you place results? For me now, it's all about getting the results in the bag and just getting what you need.
At this stage of the season, it's all about results. People that are complaining about the performance right now, I understand it because we didn't have football in April or May last year. They seem to have forgotten what football in April and May looks like. It's terrible. And I was going to write about this. I'm now not. But when I started doing that, I went back and I looked up United's 2012-13 season when they won the last time they won the league and how they played in April. Awful. They from April 1st until the end of the season, United played 2 entertaining games. Yeah. One was the 3-0 against Aston Villa that won us the title, and the other was a 5-5 draw. They won a game against Stoke where Michael Carrick scored one of the worst goals 4 minutes in. They took 5 shots the entire game and scored another on a penalty. 2-0. Yeah. Awful game. Just awful. I remember in 2008, United, when they were scoring 3-4 goals against anybody, the last 6 games of the year, they only won 3 games. Most of them were bad. They drew Middlesbrough 2-2. That was the games at the end of the season. They're not good because everybody's exhausted and COVID is only amplifying that. So just go out there. Everybody's complaining. Like we say this every week, United fans love looking at every plausible scenario of, but Leicester got James Maddison back, so they're playing well, and West Ham are playing really well, and Tottenham won a game. So before you know it, United could fall out of the top 4, and they run every plausible scenario through their head, except for the scenario of, well, maybe Manchester United will win. They might win their games.
I think the 7 years that we've had of disappointment has just programmed people to be pessimistic, haven't they? It's a shame, really, but I suppose it's what it does to you. Pauly, we are running out of time, but Deech has put a question in here, and it's totally off topic, but I feel like we should answer it because he does watch every week and he does interact with us really well. He just wants to get your thoughts on, do you think Pogba is staying, signing a new contract? Look, I know you've talked about this a lot, Pauly. I know what your thoughts on it are, but for Aditya, let him give your opinion on this, Pauly.
I think he will sign a new contract. I just don't see anybody else coming to offer the money that he's going to be looking for. United will be able to pay him the most. I do think United are going to try to knock him down a bit and be like, we don't want to pay you as much because you haven't been able to stay on the pitch. What United should do is you take that number that you would offer him, say, all right, what's he on, 250,000 a week now? And you say, well, you're getting older and you can't stay fit. So 190 That's the number that we think is right. Well, now you take that and you go, Mino, we'll give him 270, 260 a week as part of a broker of, we'll give him a bit more for you to steer Erling Haaland in our direction next year.
Yeah, it's really interesting. For me, for what it's worth, Pauly, the longer this goes on and the more I look at people's financial situation, I know the Forbes list has just been announced and obviously Barcelona and Real Madrid are up there, but the more I look at it, Pauly, it just seems like United are going to be his best option, Pauly, because with United, I do see progression, but also from a financial point of view, I feel like they're going to be able to offer him the best package as well. When I look at all these other teams, Pauly, I don't see a team there that can offer him the package on top of a transfer fee.
That's what it comes down to. That's what it comes down to is because we don't have to spend money on a transfer fee, we can offer you the best money. So if a 5-year contract would have cost with the transfer fee and everything, 200 million, United could give him a little bit more money and it would only cost 160 million over 5 years.
Yeah, exactly. But like I say, Pauly, that's unfortunately all we've got time for today. Obviously, we won't be with you guys on Thursday because we are involved in the second leg. And guys, if it's a bit dull, if it's a bit boring, don't worry about it. You know, it's Europa League, it's second leg. I think there's going to be some changes there. It doesn't really undo the brilliant work that they did on Sunday. You just have to realise the nature of that game, the nature of that tie. And obviously, United have still got unfinished business in the Premier League. And Burnley at home on Sunday, as the last 2 seasons have shown, Pauly, is no given. So, you know, we've got to plan the next 2 games wisely. But thank you, as always, for everyone who's joined us. If you've enjoyed the show, do smash a like on it. Do subscribe if you're watching for the first time. Pauly, thanks for joining me, mate. And we will see you next Tuesday for the next United Happy Hour. Take care, guys.